Hello, my dear patron family. It's PHACE, and today I'd like to present you a new production inside. It could also go like as an inspirational support clip, but as it contains some settings and ways I treat things, I feel it's more of a production inside, and the topic is hi-hats, and I'll gonna take you through some ways I work with hats, how I create them, how I process them. I'll take you through some examples step by step. And for that to show, there's a little early sketch of something more broken and doesn't have any hi-hats yet. And I use the example to show you. And I'll take you through things step by step. I'll let this play first and then we get on. So yeah, we got this groove. Sounds cool, but of course no hats in there yet. I feel it already works without hats, but hats will definitely add the pace and some more openness to it and give it a little more, let's say, sparkle and brightness. So one way you could create a hat is by synthesizing a hat, such as, for example, Serum. And I show you how I'm gonna add this hat right now, and then I'll show you how I worked it out. So it's a very standard closed hat, and it opens up at the end of 2 bars. And I'll just use the simple noise for this, and I modulated the level with an LFO. So it's like I defined the amp envelope, so to speak. And to open it up slightly at this end, you see this modulation here. I used LFO2 to modulate the decay. So you simply just drag and drop this on what you want to modulate. And I'll make sure this automation happens over the length of 2 bars over time. And what else did I do? Did to this? Added a filter to cut off some of the lower frequencies of the noise. Did add some drive and fat. And I think I did add some effects. This one's not active. This one's not active. Just some distortion to beef things up. And on the channel itself, I also added more distortion and EQing. Let me see that. All right. So here you go. Just to make them a little more loud in the mix, because when I had them run just standard, I thought they could go with a little more, let's say, power. So that's one way to create a hat. Pretty simple, straightforward. And another example, again, synthesized hat. I just used operator, also one operator, just a noise, and actually defined its amp, same way as in Serum in a way. This opens up a little more over time. I have it automated on this one. I have the decay automated. Here you see, it modulates over time. Got a saturator, just slightly saturating to it, and then I used this one, which is like a free version of Soothe in a way. And I mean, it soothes the signal a little. It steals some top resonances because I felt it's a little digital. So without it, sounded pretty harsh. You can also see it like it's pretty edgy here. And this one rolls it off a bit more smooth, you know, makes it a little more analog. All right. So next way to do a hat, you could also use like a sampler, just a sampler where you drop some audio in, some recordings in, or I got me this back in the days. It's a audio thing, I think. It's just a hats tool, and you can choose some certain hats of it, and you can control their envelope, their pitch, their noise, LFO them, add some more effects, and yeah. And I created this, and that's some cool stuff I can show you when you work this way with MIDI. I use an arpeggiator to to control the rate of the MIDI trigger that triggers the sample, and you can do some cool shit with it. And I'll show you what it's set on 1/8 notes, so it plays every 8 notes. It plays a hat. So that is pretty cool. You could also just set it on free, so you can play with the rate, so you can create a bit more of a swing to the hats. It's pretty hard to do that for drum and bass because it's so fast, but for stuff like trap or slower tempo, it's kind of actually a nice thing to do, to play with the rate and give it a little more swing. And did add some EQing to this to make sure the low frequencies don't kind of affect the sub and bass too much. And I added a little delay, even though you could just work with the envelope. With this delay, all it does, like, it lets the signal start like 8 milliseconds later, and just to avoid it clashes with some other transients. And you could do on this envelope too, but I feel like this is also a nice way for you to know if you work with audio, for example. It's just a tiny difference, like you probably won't notice, but it keeps the mix a little cleaner. All right, and you could combine those hats with some shakers. Even more pace, you go from 1/8 to 1/16. Those are just drag and drop samples, and all I did to these, I added some distortion, heavy distortion I think, added some EQing, and again a little bit of delay. Cut out those lows, you don't need them. Right, next example is again with the hats tool. Yes. And what did I want to show here? Yes, again, so that's a nice open hat, and I like it to use various hats. Like, I always try to make sure when I work on a track that I don't use too much of the same hats, because that makes your high end a little boring. So I try to use different hats, like closed hats, open hats, more metallic ones, shakers, more organic ones, tambourines, just to give the high end more resonance spikes and to make it sound more lively and changing. And what I like to use sometimes on like more open hats like this is something called modal. It's a spectral resonator, and I mean, you get more of a bell sound then, but you see what this can, like, you can turn any sound into, like, I don't know, a bottle, a bell, or whatever, like something that is like crazy resonant up there. So I really like to play around with that on like those open hats more. So that's the really cool thing I use on the hats. Also to give like those more open hats a sidechain groove. I think I'd sidechains those more longer hats to the kick. That's gonna add a little more groove to those hats, and I feel this is more fun to listen to over time. Other way, for example, you just record your own hats out of a drum machine, or like you play the drums. This is a recording I did on my Pulsar drum machine, and I used another spectral resonator to change that. Let me show. Yeah, I like those hats, those kind of hats. They kind of they're not as flat as white noise. They kind of stick through, you know. They have those resonances, and I use the spectral resonator to give some more lower, more organic feeling to it. Just created, they're running through clean. And I used another layer where it's just sound a bit lo-fi by themselves, but in combination they sound pretty cool. And I used some slight distortion on it. Used some stereo spread to sort the stereo, so the stereo is more nice. Stereo spread is a pretty cool tool to use to spread a signal out, saturate it, add maybe more widening if you want. Can play with the bands of the spectral generator, and I like it because it's a really cool tool to use for those kind of things. And did EQ some of the low end out, which does make a difference, as you hear. You have those low signal impulses that you don't really need to feed into any limiter or saturator, and then I wrote them off slightly with a low pass. So they're slightly less edgy. So those kind of hats speed a track up pretty much, you know. And you don't need anything more. Maybe like a combination of those two. Of course, you can change patterns, whatever. But you see how my thinking is by showing you those things. Then another method, you take just a break. And you can create out of a break, this is more like of a weird bad recorded break, and you can add some bit crushing to it with erosion, or maybe some convolution, and they could be actually like percussions this way, but if you get rid of the slow end noise and add some more high end overdrive, they're hats, you know. And so that's a cool, as you see, there's so many cool ways to process things, so you would get a hi-hat. I feel it's a great field to play and to be creative. And they all add up to the beat, you know. And next instrument I really like, tambourine. They're sometimes hard. Like, you need a really good recorded one. Sometimes they sound a little messy, and I tend to maybe try to simulate them by synthesizing them. But I just try to work with this one. Turn all this off. It would work like this already, just a recording, you know, not too much. Maybe a little. So this is more overdrive, but then cutting out some of those lows. Get a bit more stereo control, and then soothing them out a little in the tops so they're not as digital edgy. So tambourines I like too, because you see they kind of make it all funky up there and give it not tone, because in the tops you don't really have tone, it's more ringing, but it's nice ringing if the pitch is right. Of course you could maybe alter even the pitch of it with a pitch shifter, or maybe on the sample itself. Sometimes it's nice to kind of listen to your heads and try to pitch them, and then you instantly might notice, hey, this pitch works nicer. And I try to, it's a sort of tambourine, which I'll try to synthesize, and I'll play it to you. So I like it. It's more clear, and you see those heavy spikes here in the mix. They kind of work. Maybe they're a little. I'd limit them a little more. I didn't add any processing, but you see, there's. I used this inharmonic noise table for it, and just created like an LFO that controls the panning and the level to make it a little more interesting. And it didn't add anything else. Maybe some reverb and some EQing. Yeah, the reverb is kind of essential. Make it sound a little more roomy and acoustic. So you could, again, go in and, like, I don't know, cut some things, control these more. And but this works already pretty well. And give, like, the whole track a new character. And next example, well, last example already. It's more of a creative method to create hi-hat sounds if you don't have any hats or samples laying around, if you don't have a drum machine to record from, or maybe just not too many, maybe just one or two or a few, then it's a good way to just add what you got to a sampler. And I did use a Max for Live randomizer you can use to randomize specific frequencies, parameters of various devices you insert. And on this one, I just switch it off so you can see what it does. So let all these go. Well, now it's been already modulated, so right now it's just really a sampler playing something with specific settings which are already altered from the default. And then I added this and I started to map. You just hit map and I started to, I don't know, modulate the starting point, modulate the length of the sample. And then I added another beat repeat where I altered the interval, the chance, and added a pitch shifter, and I mapped the course to it. I think I also mapped the mode to be randomized and the rate and the amount of the LFO. And then at the end, I added some control EQ so sounds don't go over the board, and some limiter because it can go crazy. And as you see, this tool, it alters. Every bar it alters, or every beat. So that's pretty cool. And you can come up with really cool random sounds. You could just record them and build crazy hats out of these, you know. So I recommend to have a look at that. I think this actually, it's a free tool you can get for free. So yeah, that's my little spotlight on hats for today, and I hope you find this insightful. And I probably will create some hats and will offer you guys a hat pack this month as well. And I'll be streaming tonight as well to start the month. And yeah, I hope you're good. Hope you're good. And thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting me. And see you soon. Peace.